starting the Lake Tahoe picture, the first thing I'm going to do is draw the horizon line. And I like to draw the horizon line using this trick because sometimes you don't have a ruler handy. So what you can do is you're going to brace your hand against the edge of the canvas, and I'm going to place my pencil down about 1/3 in from this edge. So I have 2/3 here and 1/3 here, roughly about that much. And I'm going to start, and then I'm going to freeze my hand so it doesn't move and it's pushing against this edge. And I'm going to drag it down. And I end up with a fairly straight line that's also fairly even. I can use my ruler to measure it, and it looks a little bit off. So let me see how much off it is. No, that's pretty good. Okay, so then I'm going to look at the picture and I'm going to see that there are some distant mountains. And they're going to go up like this. And then I see that there's this kind of outcropping of rocks and trees. So when I draw this area, and there's a lot of rocks in there and a lot of trees, I'm not going to draw in too much detail because I'm going to end up painting over this. I do want to draw where I want the tree. So this is the trunk of the tree, and I do want the main rocks and where that's going to end. Remember, you can always add in things or take away things. And then the bottom of this painting, they're sort of like these big lumps, which I think are rocks covered by snow. But I'm going to simplify that a little bit. I'm just going to draw kind of a diagonal right down there. So this will be snow, then there'll be water, then there'll be more rocks and snow and trees, and then the distant mountains. And that's all I'm going to put in for now. All right, the next thing I want to do is paint the sky. So I'm going to turn the canvas horizontal or vertical like this because it's easier to paint up and down than across, like back and forth. It's a little more difficult to get that really even. So turn your canvas vertical, and I'm going to use the warm blue because the warm blue is kind of purpley in color. And so I'm going to use my cool colors and analogous colors where they're going to be purples or violets. It's going to be blue and then with some green. So I'm going to put some of the warm blue on my paper palette. And I already have some white on a different palette, so I'm just going to use that. Okay, so this warm blue, I'm just going to start brushing on the top here. So take the blue, brush on the top. Don't want it too thick, okay? I don't want it too wide, nor do I want too much paint on my canvas. I think one thing is when people are learning to paint, they have too much paint on their brush and they have too much paint on their canvas, and they're trying to kind of mix all these colors in, and they just can't because it's just too much paint that you have to keep mixing. Okay, so I painted a line of blue, and then I'm going to do something called wet on wet painting. So that means I'm going to take this white, and I'm going to put it down on my canvas, and I'm going to blend the white into the blue while that blue paint is still wet. Okay, so I'm going to blend this in. And if you've ever watched Bob Ross paint, this is what he does. He does all wet on wet painting. So he always paints that sky or that background first, and then he paints on top of it. Okay, so I've gotten that far. What I'm going to do is wipe off my brush and get a lot of that paint off. Okay, I'm not rinsing it out. I just wiped off the paint. And I'm going to take the white again, and I'm just going to keep blending all the way down to the tops of the mountains. Because I wanted a really kind of pale blue sky, kind of pale purpley blue sky. So I didn't want too much, I didn't want it too dark. I dipped my brush in the water just to kind of get that paint moving again. Just kind of go along the top ridge of the mountains. Remember that if you go over something or accidentally paint over a line, it's okay because we'll fix it later. It's no big deal. It's painting. Painting means that we can always repaint areas. Okay, so I'm just going to very lightly touch the canvas with this brush, like barely brushing, barely dragging it across the surface to blend in this blue very evenly. So what I wanted, or what I wanted to achieve, is that the sky is darker at the top and it's going to get lighter towards the horizon. And that, if you look at the sky, that's what happens. So that at the end, yours should look something like this. Just going to brush that part in. Okay, doesn't have to be super, super perfect. Okay, all right. I'm going to tilt my canvas because it's easier for me to paint in the clouds. So painting in the clouds, I'm going to use my round brush. For painting in the main part of the sky, I used my flat brush because it's easier to use that big flat edge to go back and forth. And you can blend easier with the flat brush, but I'm going to use the round brush to paint the clouds because I want to draw. So round brushes are more for drawing when you think about it, for painting. So I'm going to take my white and I'm going to make kind of like arcs, okay? Like this, right next to each other. This is the top of my cloud. Okay, just like that. And then I'm going to take my brush at the bottom of the cloud and I'm going to blend into the sky. So again, no, I gotta do that. This is wet on wet painting. This will not work if your paint in the background is dry. So you can't paint the sky, let it dry, and then go back and paint the clouds. You have to do this all at one time to achieve this technique of wet on wet painting. Okay, so I keep using the white and I keep making these shapes, cloud-like shapes, and then I just very lightly blend in the bottom, just like that. And sometimes I can take the brush and maybe add streaks of cloud over here. Maybe I want streaks of cloud there. Okay, maybe you want to add in another cloud. They're very pale because it's very light blue in the background. So it might be a little difficult to see. I will add one up here in the darker blue sky so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to add these arc strokes so that you make a cloud, and then I'm going to just gently brush back and forth, blending that in. And then I go back and I adjust. Get some So if your cloud gets too blue or too much, picks up too much of the color in the background, you can always, what I do is wipe off the brush. Just wipe it off with a paper towel, or just wipe it off like this. I don't rinse it out because I don't want water on there. And I use more white and I just go on top like this. And then remember, I kind of blend it out on the bottom so it softens how that cloud is in the sky. Okay. Just like that. Okay, so you're going to paint the sky first and then add in your clouds and then let it dry so that at the end the whole thing should look like this. Okay, like that. And then we'll start painting the rest of it. Okay, so get to this part for step 1.